enhance enhancing wireless communications with photonics. So I'm from the Department of Electrical Engineering and the Bharati School of Telecommunication Technology at the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi. And my group is called UFO Chip, which is ultra fast optical communications and high performance integrated photonics. So I joined IIT in January of 2019, and we started the group there. So it's been almost 3 years. Of course, the unfortunate last 1.5 years have been, COVID time. So, but we are slowly building up our lab. So I hope every one of you are doing well and staying safe. So uh, let's get started. So just a bit about our group. Our group is, as I said, called UFO Chip. So this is the group website. And current, so this is what the homepage looks like. So we can work in the area of microwave photonics, nonlinear optics, optical communications, lasers, frequency codes, and varied research topics. So currently, our group consists of 7 PhD students, 2 MSR students, 5 MTech students, and 3 BTech students. So this is currently a lab. So at the moment, we have 3 optical tables with microwave photonics signal processing test bed over here. Over here, we have a signal generation test bed. On this side, we're doing performance testing test bed. Over here, we're setting up a integrated photonics test bed, and we're getting another table in where we'll be doing some laser development as well. We also have a coherent test bed. So this is another lab in collaboration with my colleague in India. So this is we are currently setting up a coherent test bed. So which will allow us to do coherent optical communications with dual polarization. So our target is to set this up as a terabits per second test bed. So we're working hard on it, and hopefully that should be up soon. So we have a lot of exciting projects in our group. So if you are interested in some experimental photonics research in the area of communications, nonlinear photonics, and more recently quantum photonics, please get in touch with us. We are always looking for motivated students. Okay, so just with that introduction, I can start with a bit of an outline. So the aim of this talk is to demonstrate the advantage of photonics for wireless communication applications, okay? So I hope in the next 30, 35 minutes or even sooner, you'd be able to appreciate how we can harness photonics in the context of wireless optical communication systems. So I'll start with a bit of motivation. We'll tell you a bit about microwave photonics, which is the field I've been working in for the last 6, 7 years. Then I'll talk about integrated microwave photonics, which combines 2 very important areas, microwave photonics and integrated photonics together. So it's nice, you've already heard some nice lectures by Wim and Shankar. So they are the, 2 authorities in the field of integrated photonics. So they would have told you really exciting stuff in that area. And so then I'll talk about this area known as light sound interactions. And then I'll talk about how do we take microwave photonics from the lab, from a research concept into real life applications. Okay, so with that, let's start with a bit of motivation. So there is an increasing demand on broadband RF signal processing. Okay, so all of us have smartphones, right? So all of us have these smartphones over here, right? So and this is 4G. We are talking about when you're walking out on the street, you're able to stream YouTube, even do video calls. Sometimes some of my students are taking lectures from their 4G connection. So we made considerable advances in this area. So you can see on your left side of your screen, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people on the smartphone, right? So you can imagine in this small area, how much data would be will be getting communicated, right? So if everyone's streaming a YouTube video, you can calculate capacity in terms of gigabits per second per square foot, right? So that's going to be quite large in this small area. Of course, it would have been nice if all of these were talking to each other, but this is the world we are living in when everyone's on the smartphone. So anyways, this is how we are evolving. Space communications as well. Everyone's going into space. Billionaires are now going into space. And you want satellite to satellite communications over long distances, usually line of sight communications and very secure communications as well. And thirdly, a very important application is defense. So you want communications to be extremely secure with as low latency as possible. Okay, so you want the current requirements are the communications need to be broadband, which means you should be able to get a lot of capacity. It should be at high frequencies because if you want more capacity, you want to be able to move to higher frequencies. And you want the communications to be as low loss as possible, right? For pretty much anything in photonics, you want things to be low loss, right? I've never heard of anyone who says, no, 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 I don't like low loss, give me more loss, right? Everything should be always low loss. So how has the communications evolved? So it started in the 1980s where none of us were born, all right? So it started as 2.4 kilobits per second. Okay, then you move towards the late 80s to 90s when some of us were born, 64 kilobits per second. The other 2G networks, then the 3G networks from the early 2000s, and then we started moving towards 4G, right? So this is currently where we are at 4G, and you've already got Samsung releasing phones, right? So they're releasing the 5G compatible phones, okay? So which means even though the network isn't there, whenever it comes in India, it will be compatible with 5G. So this is where we're moving towards. And already people are talking about 6G, right? So what is the next generation, which of course will be rooted a lot in photonics as well. So what is microwave photonics? So this is the evolution of telecom networks. And now photonics is already beginning to play some role in communications. And my assertion is 6G will be heavily centered around photonics because we'll be looking at capacities which are just not possible with conventional RF systems. So what is this field of microwave photonics? So you can gauge it out. So it's microwave plus photonics, right? So you combine microwave technologies with photonics technologies. So we have, for example, a limited bandwidth. So if you look at these RF cables, these are cables that you would have in your lab. So some of these are some coaxial. This is a BNC. The most common cable isn't shown here, which is SMA cables. But if some of you work in an RF lab, you would know that, yeah, these are conventional cables that you use. So these have a limited bandwidth. They're extremely heavy, right? So they're about 600 kilogram per kilometer. They have a very high loss of 190 dB per kilometer at 6 gigahertz. So for people who've done basic RF communications, know that the losses scales as a square root of frequency, right? So if your frequency goes up, your losses also go up. So that's a big problem. And they're extremely rigid and have a large cross section. Okay, so you compare it to these nice little objects which we know and love so much. These are optical fibers. So these are extremely broadband. So we talk about optical communications. These are in the order of 193 terahertz, right? Blows RF right out of the water. So RF is few gigahertz. Optics is 193 terahertz. So you can see how much more bandwidth we can get in. So if I'm sending a 10 gigahertz carrier, maybe I can send 1 gigahertz of bandwidth, maybe 2 or 3. But when I'm sending 193 terahertz, yeah, bandwidth is not an issue, right? I can send in as much bandwidth as possible, limited by the components that I have. The RF cables are heavy. Optical fibers are extremely light. So, people say it's as thick as a human hair. The losses are 0.2 dB a kilometer. The photonics enables extreme reconfiguration and tunability, as I'll show in my lecture. And it's immune to electromagnetic interference, which is which is a very important property for defense applications. So these are 3 very nice review papers on microphotonics. So you can read these as well if you're interested, and I'll give you some references in the rest of my talk as well. So where all can microphotonics help? So microphotonics can help in signal transport. So if I want to send a signal from point A to point B over a very large distance, then the advantage of fibers comes into play. So I can use fibers which have an extremely low loss. So I can transport it to maybe 40 kilometers. and have only 8 dB of loss, right? On the other hand, if I try and do this at 40 kilometers, the value will be so low that I can't even measure it, right? It's just thousands of dB, which makes absolutely no sense. The signal's dead by that time, okay? So you can use it for something known as radio over fiber and something known as antenna remoting, where you want to take your antennas and put it far away from its signal processing unit. This can be useful in, for example, in radio astronomy, where you want to put your antennas far away uh, and bring the signal to your central processing station. So this here shows an example of where RF radio over fiber can be used in 5G networks. So in 5G networks, you have something known as a remote radio head, which you can connect to a base station where you send signals, and that you can connect to your baseband unit, where you have multiple signals that come together, which are aggregated in a central system, and these can be connected by a radio fiber, right? So your length can be quite long in this case. The next is processing. So in addition to processing signals, in addition to transporting signals, you can also process signals. Okay, so I can make phase shifters, I can make delay lines, and I can make beamforming networks with my microphotonics. I can also do signal generation, and I can also do signal detection. Okay, so these are broadly the 4 areas that you can do with microphotonics. In this talk, we're going to focus on the first 2. Okay, so we're going to focus on signal transport and signal processing. So let's go over the basic concepts of microphotonics. So what is microphotonics? Let's say that we have an antenna over here, right? So this antenna receives this gigahertz signal. So this shows a broadband signal. Let's say it's a few hundred megahertz broad. You receive it on an antenna. Next, what you would do in microphotonics is you'll do electrical to optical conversion, where you'll up convert your RF signal into the optical domain. So you go from a few gigahertz, you up convert it to 193 terahertz. So we know from basic modulation that when you modulate a carrier, you get an upper sideband and a lower sideband. Okay, so you get these 2 RF information, which is coded in the sidebands. Next, you do optical processing. So you do some sort of processing in the optical domain. And the reason why we do it is because photonics allows us a lot of flexibility. So with photonics, so I, by training, I'm a photonics engineer. That is my domain, right? So I'm very comfortable with photonics. I can do all sorts of tricks and wizardry in optics. I can combine a lot of different things. I can combine photonic crystal cavities. I can combine fiber Bragg gratings. I can combine Brillouin scattering, 4-way mixing, combs, all sorts of things in photonics, and process the signal in the optical domain. And then I back convert it, down convert it to the electrical domain. Okay. So with this, I can end up with a filter. As an example, I can also end up with phase shifters, beamformers, delay lines, frequency measurement, signal generation, all sorts of different things. But the basics remains the same. 3 steps: up conversion, processing, down conversion. Okay, it's as simple as that. That's the whole microphotonics in a nutshell. These 3 steps. What does a microphotonic link look like? So how do we do this conversion? So we take your RF signal. So as I showed here, so this is your RF signal. We convert it into the optical domain using an electro-optic modulator. Okay, an electro-optic modulator works using the works on the principle of the Pockels effect, where a changing voltage changes the refractive index. The changing refractive index changes the phase, and the change in the phase changes the phase of the electric field of the light, which you can put in an interferometer and convert the phase fluctuations into intensity fluctuations. So that's the concept of a Mach Zehnder interferometer. Okay, and it's an integrated device. It's a very small device. Then you send it through an optical fiber, right? So this is what it looks like, what I showed before. You take your RF signal, you up convert it. So you have your optical carrier at 193 terahertz. You have an upper sideband and a low sideband. And then you send it to a photodetector. And at the end of the day, you have this RF signal. Okay. So this is an example of a microphotonic link. or an example of radio over fiber. So what I've done is I've transported this RF signal over multiple kilometers, and I've received it, and I've maintained the signal integrity. Okay. So this is the basics of how you would form a microphotonic. So this is something we've done quite recently, signal transport, where we did a radio fiber. We use microwave photonics to send signals over 50 to 60 kilometers of length. So this is the architecture where we're looking at a more front haul network where we're trying to send multiple signals to multiple users. So we have multiple lasers which we combine in wavelengths. So this is lambda 1, lambda 2, all the way to lambda n. We combine it with a array waveguide grating, and we combine all of them and send it to a power splitter. Based on the load, if you have a lot of users, we can use multiple wavelengths. If you have very low users, we just use one wavelength. So this allows something that we call as resource allocation in a network. So if I have, let's say, as I showed that area where 8 people were on the smartphone, that counts as a very high usage. I might end up using 2 wavelengths. Okay. And on each wavelength, I'll put different frequencies. So I'm servicing one user with one frequency, another user with another frequency, another user with another frequency, and we go to various wavelengths. Okay. So then I send it through an antenna, and this is received and down converted, and then you get your signal. So this is experimentally. So this is another test bed we had formed in our lab. So this consists of a high speed oscilloscope, 12 gigahertz AWG, a few lasers, photodetectors, amplifiers, wavelength selective switches. So we're able to send signals to various different users. And with that, we can show that we can get higher order modulation. Like we can go from 4 QAM to 16 QAM to 64 QAM. Right. So this was published very, very recently in JSAT, and also I picked on as an invited guest. Okay, so this is an example of what you can do on radio fiber, and this is already being implemented. So this is an example of technology where photonics is actually improving, enhancing wireless communication systems. So radio over fiber is already a thing. It's already been implemented. Okay, so that should be quite exciting that we've already got examples of communication networks which are enhanced with photonics. So for the rest of the talk, I will focus mainly on microphotonic processing, where there needs a lot of development that needs to go in to take this from the lab into the real world. So taking back this, going back to the same example where I say I take my RF signal. Okay, so I take my RF signal, I put it onto my modulator, but now it's not a fiber. I am putting some sort of a processor in. Okay, so again it gets converted. I put a processor which puts some sort of gain here, and then I receive it at the photodetector, and I can get filtering. Okay, so this is an example of microwave photonic processing, and the rest of my talk will be based on microwave photonic processing. So before we move ahead, I should tell you some 3 main performance metrics, because while I say, yeah, you can convert an RF signal, you can start from this point and end up with a signal which looks like this. What I didn't tell you is that, of course, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Unfortunately, everyone would like free lunch, but there is always a drawback. The drawbacks are performance metrics. While we can get a lot of functionalities in place with photonics, where we lack is performance metrics. So once we go through this, you know that every time you convert from one type of energy to the other, there is losses. So here we're converting from RF to photonic and photonic back to RF. So there are 2 conversions. So you have conversion losses. Okay, we add noise and we limit the dynamic range. So the 3 main parameters that we need to think about are the link gain, which gives a measure of the RF signal gain, the noise figure, which gives a figure measure of how much noise my entire system adds. If you think about the photonic system, you have a photodetector, which contributes shot noise. You also have thermal noise, and the laser has relative intensity noise. If you have amplifier, they are ASE noise. Okay, so you have a lot of noise sources that are in there. So your noise figure gets severely impacted. And then there's something known as a spurious-free dynamic range, which is the range of input RF powers before which you have no spurious frequencies. If people have studied nonlinear optics, you would know that if you mix two strong optical signals in a nonlinear material, you get, four-way mixing, you get second harmonic generation and self-phase modulation and things like that. Similarly, in the RF domain, if you have two strong RF signals, you can also get the generation of nonlinear RF components. So we want to make sure our system is low loss, has a low noise figure, and has a very high dynamic range where we have very limited nonlinearity. So now with that basic introduction, what are the requirements for practical microphotonics? Okay, so it should be compact. Okay, it should have a small size, it should have a small weight, a small form factor. Okay, and it should have low power consumption. It should be very low cost, and it should have compatibility with existing RF architecture. This is what we call as SWaP C squared. Next, it should have high tunability, it should have high reconfiguration, it should have high frequency, which contributes to it being highly functional. And finally, it should have high performance, which means it should have high gain, it should have low noise, and it should have a high spurious-free dynamic. So in order to get all of these together, integration should be the need of the hour, right? It is the need of the hour. You need integration to lead to practical microphotonics. What does photonic integration mean? We need to make sure a lot of the components are possible on a chip. So you need the laser, the modulator, the photodetector, and the processor. Everything should be on a photonic chip. Okay. Ideally, we wanted that chip to fit on a smartphone. That is the dream. So it is very critical because we are competing with RF components, right? So if if my RF component is that big, right? Your smartphones already have RF filters, and those are that big, right? If I give my RF engineer friend a device which is that big, they'll throw it away, right? They're like, that's of no use, right? That's too big. You need to make the devices very, very small and compact. So in that context, a lot of exciting development has gone in microphotonics. So there is something like programmable photonics, which Wim taught you in the last LAMP lecture. And this is also some work which is done in Valencia by Jose Capani's group. This is an on-chip optoelectronic oscillator, which is an example of a signal generator, which is done by the group of John Bowers in UCSB. And this is an example of an on-chip filter, which was done by David Marcon. So currently, what are the outstanding challenges? The challenges is performance. Every time you put a photonic chip, so Shankar and Wim would have told you that every time you put a photonic chip, you'll get at least 5 to 6, or maybe that's a good number. You'll at least get 7 to 8 dB of insertion loss. Now, the problem with microphotonics is because you have a photodetector at the end, you get square law detection, right? So you have I square R, which means that 1 dB of optical loss contributes to 2 dB of RF losses. Now, that's a big problem. So if I get 7 dB of optical loss, I'll get 14 dBs of RF loss. That's a big problem, right? So we need to make sure that our performance is good so that we don't have that degradation of the insertion loss. And every time you add insertion loss, you also degrade the noise figure. Okay, so 1 dB of insertion loss degrades your noise figure by 1 dB. So that's again a big problem. The next is resolution. Optics typically has coarse resolution. So if you think of most of your optical processes, your fiber Bragg grating, your photonic crystal cavities, your Fabry-Perot devices, your ring resonators, all of these have very, very large resonances, right? So your processing is limited to gigahertz and beyond. So that's a bit of a problem. So now with all of that introduction, In the rest of the talk, I will focus on these two problems, right? So microphotonics is a huge field. You can read, you can spend weeks, months, years just learning about this field. So I'm focusing only on two main problems that we've tried to solve. The first one is the resolution problem. For that, we use light-sound interactions, known as Brillouin scattering. The second problem is performance, where we're trying to take microphotonics to the real world. So let's target the first problem, which is resolution. We use stimulated Brillouin scattering, which is a nonlinear optical process to target this problem. So SBS is a nonlinear optical effect. It's a three-wave interaction. So where you have two optical waves is where light is inelastically scattered of vibrations or phonons. Okay, so you have stimulated Brillouin scattering. So you can have scattering either in two ways, right? So you can have the first one we call as backward Brillouin scattering, where you have a forward propagating wave and a backward propagating probe. The other is known as forward Brillouin scattering, where your probe and your pump co-propagate. So what does this look like? So we have the one on the left is known as backward SBS, where you send two probes, two signals in the counter propagating direction. So you have your red wave, which is your probe wave, and your pump blue wave, which propagates in the opposite direction. That leads to a beat pattern which propagates. Okay, and this beat pattern causes acoustic vibrations, and this leads to scattering of your pump wave. The other is known as forward Brillouin scattering, where you have transverse vibrations, right? So your vibrations actually occur in the transverse direction. So if you send in an SBS pump, so what I show here on the x-axis is frequency. Let's say my SBS pump is at FC, okay? So what happens is if I send a signal separated by a specific frequency known as capital gamma B or the Brillouin shift, only at that specific frequency within a very narrow bandwidth, I get amplification, okay? So if I put a signal in that bandwidth, I will see the signal gets amplified. And this gain bandwidth is extremely narrow for Brillouin scattering. It is on the order of 30 megahertz. Okay. Now, if I send a signal at a blue shifted frequency or a frequency higher, then I experience loss. Okay. So this makes SBS a very interesting nonlinear process. I get extremely narrow band amplification, right? So that is a value proposition for SBS compared to other optical processes. Other optical processes, more than gigahertz bandwidth. Brillouin scattering, 30 megahertz. That makes SBS extremely exciting for high resolution optical processing. And it gives me the flexibility. Either I can operate it to give amplification, or I can put my signal here to give it loss. Okay, so this makes SBS an extremely exciting and unique nonlinear process. And this is what we've harnessed a lot. Okay, so if you're interested in knowing how we can design a microphotonic subsystem, in this invited paper from this year, we've told the users how you can design your very own microphotonic subsystem. So you can read this paper as well. Now, SBS gain is given by G, which depends on a gain coefficient and is proportional to the pump power, the effective length, which depends on how much loss you have in your waveguide, and the effective area. Okay. So if I want more gain, I need to make sure my waveguide core is extremely small. Okay. If I want more gain, I need to make sure my length is extremely long. If I want more gain, I need to make sure the losses are extremely low, because extremely small, because L effective actually includes the loss. Okay. So the lengths are extremely short on the chip, but the areas can be small too. So the waveguide design, material that we've chosen as a material of choice are chalcogenides. So they have a very good optoacoustic overlap. Okay, so this is the geometry that we used. So this has a width of 2.4 micrometer, has a height of 400 nanometers and it's etched, and it has another height of 400 nanometers. So this was fabricated by our collaborators at the Australian National University. With this, we managed to show a gain of in excess of 50 dB, right? So you can see that the value proposition of SBS. We get 50 dB of gain from a chip scale device in a bandwidth of only 10 to 15 megahertz. Okay, so this is a very exciting result. So the device is only that big. So it's only 2 centimeters long. On that, we have a lot of spirals, but we can get gains in excess of 50 dB. So how we can use this for signal processing? So as I said before, for microphotonics, we have 3 main blocks. We have electrical to optical conversion. We have signal processing, where we process the signal. And finally, we have optical to electrical conversion, where we down convert the signal into the RF domain. In between, we have our SBS processor with our backward propagating pump, which allows us to process the signal. So this is what we call as electronics, right? So this is our RF signal, which is the electrical signal. All of this is photonics, so which we have an optical modulator and the signal laser. And this is what we call as phononics, where we have our optical processor based on interaction between photons and phonons. So phonons actually helps us to bridge electronics and photonics. So with this, we can actually solve some of the challenges. So with on-chip SBS processors, so this is an example of an on-chip processor. We can solve the challenges of microphotonics. On-chip, we can make filters, phase shifters, delay lines, and frequency measurement. So let's look at an example of a microphotonic functionality. Let's look at a bandpass filter. Okay, filters can have applications in communications, in radars, and in radio astronomy. So let's look at this simple example, this animation. So let's say I have a signal of interest, right? And I have an unwanted signal in red. I want to get rid of my unwanted signal. So what do? I put a bandpass filter, right? I get rid of my signal. Now, if my signal of interest moves, I'm stuck, right? If I have a static filter, then it doesn't work. So in that case, I would have to rely on filter banks and switch from one filter bank to the other. Okay, so that's an inefficient process. On the other hand, if I have a filter which is tunable, right? I can tune my filter and track the signal, right? So that's a desirable property. So I want the filter to be tunable. It should be reconfigurable, which means that if I have a signal of interest, which is very narrow, and then I increase the bandwidth, right? I want a filter which can be reconfigured with bandwidth. It should be compact and it should have high resolution. So there are some integrated microphotonic solutions for high resolution, stimulated Brillon scattering, and ring resonators. As I said before, ring resonators are more in bandwidth, so their bandwidths are much larger. Stimulated Brillon scattering enables you to get narrow bandwidth and also allows you to do amplification. So this is an example of how you would actually make your RF filter. So this shows a laser, right? A phase modulator to convert your electrical signal to the optical domain, your SPS and pump, followed by a photodetector. A VNA is a device which allows you to characterize the properties of your filter. So again, showing this animation for the third time, just to drive home the point how simple microphotonics really is. You take your RF signal, convert it to the optical domain, take your SBS chip, put a lot of gain on it, right? So you have your pump, add the Brillouin shift, you have amplification, you amplify your signal, and at the photodetector, you get a response which looks like this, right? So by doing this, I can make a bandpass filter. Now the beauty of this is this bandpass filter, just by reconfiguring the pump, all right? I can reconfigure the pump electronically or optically. I can tune the pump. I can change the bandwidth of the pump. So I can make this filter to be extremely flexible. So let me show you what I mean. So if I tune the bandwidth of this filter, I can make a filter which is tunable all the way from 30 megahertz, right? So you can see 30 megahertz. I can reconfigure it all the way to 440 megahertz. I can maintain the band pass ripple, which is an important property for RF, to less than 2 dB. By tuning the pump, I can tune the filter, right, from 3 gigahertz all the way to 30 gigahertz in the RF domain. So now that is quite an exciting result, because with conventional RF electronics, it is just not possible to have this sort of reconfiguration or this sort of tuning, let alone all of this at the same time. Okay, so you're able to tune the frequency from 3 gigahertz all the way to 30 gigahertz. You can also have multiple filters, right? So this is, you can have filters on demand. I can have filters at 20 gigahertz, 22 gigahertz, 28 gigahertz, or I can have multiple filters. This shows the flexibility that microwave photonics enables us. Okay, so this is the value proposition for microwave photonics. So I've talked about functionality for microwave photonics. So we've talked about integration. So we have the devices, so the microwave photonic devices using Brillouin scattering, which are achieved on a chip, compactness. We've also talked about functionality, where I showed you I can get high tunability, right? So I can get high tunability, reconfiguration, right? So I can show you reconfiguration here as well. And we can get high frequency filters as well. So up to 30 gigahertz usually. Now let's look at targeting the performance, right? So how do we get high gain? How do we get low noise figure? And how do we get high spurious field dynamic? So typical link performance has been, so if you talk about only a laser, a modulator, a fiber, and a photodetector, which is a simple analog photonic link, which is nothing but a glorified coaxial cable, right? I'm sending an RF signal from point A to point B, right? That's it. The best results that have been achieved are link gains of positive link gains, noise figures up to 3 dB, and spurious field dynamic range of 120. As soon as you put a functional device, right? As soon as you put a chip, things start going downhill. And the reason I foreshadowed was before, right? The insertion loss. The insertion loss is a big killer for microphotons. You can see why. Without functionality, no functionality, performance is 0 dB. With functionality, you get 30 dB of loss. Okay, this is 0 to 20 dB of gain. With photonics, RF photonics, if you put a functionality, you get losses. That's a big problem. That adversely affects your noise figure. Okay, noise figures are worse than 30 dB. And all of that affects your spurious field dynamic. Okay, 100. So there was a big gap here, right? So between an RF cable and a functionality, there was a big gap, which was a big prohibitor from going from the lab to an actual application in the RF communications network. So that was the target problem that we were trying to solve. So this is, we optimized. So we achieved full functionality. So this is Yang Hu, who was my PhD student. Now he's doing a postdoc in EPFL in Switzerland, where we got integrated microphotonic filters with unprecedented performance. We showed multiband and fully tunable filters with high rejection and high resolution of 150 megahertz. Okay. So now, how do we see? So we get rejection of about 50 dB. We get resolution of about 150 megahertz. Right? So this is the performance that we achieve. So you see that we have positive link gain. So we show functionality, and we're also able to show performance. We show it as lossless. In fact, it's amplified. We show the lowest noise figure ever to be reported, and we show a high dynamic range of 116. So how did we do this? So we did this using not stimulated Brillouin scattering, but ring resonators. So we use a simple modulation. Okay, so we use intensity modulation and we use a cascade of two ring resonators. Okay, one is undercoupled and one is overcoupled. Okay, so I'm sure that in the two lectures you've heard before from Shankar and Vin, you would have heard a bit about ring resonators. So what does the ring resonator do? So on the low sideband, we put the undercoupled ring, which gives a response like this. And over here, we have a response from the overcoupled ring, which looks something like this. What is interesting is if you look at the phase response shows a very, very low slope, a very, very low phase, right? So over here, it shows a phase of more or less 0. But the magic happens because of this overcoupled ring. The overcoupled ring actually at the center shows a pi phase shift, okay? So now what happens is the lower sideband at this frequency, let's call it the filter frequency, has an amplitude, let's say, of in dB of -1 dB and a phase of 0, whereas the upper sideband at the same frequency has an amplitude of -1 dB but a phase of pi. Now we know from from high school physics that if we have two vectors which look like this, okay, you have this vector pointing in this direction and you have another vector pointing in the other direction, right, of the same amplitude. So if you have two vectors in the opposite direction with the same amplitude, they lead to a null vector, right? So we have destructive interference. This is something that is known as RF interferometry. We use interferometry in the RF domain. So at that frequency, we get pure cancellation and we get a notch response. Okay. So we use a very standard and a very cheap intensity modulator. We use a low loss photonic chip based on silicon nitride, and we use selective interference, which allows high extinction at the stop path. So here we have high extinction, we get a very sharp notch filter. But at all other frequencies, what do we have? We have the same signal, right? So we have two vectors now in the same direction, right? You have two vectors, have the same amplitude, have the same phase, they have constructive interference. So at the notch frequency, we get destructive interference. At all the other frequencies, we get constructive interference. So this allows us to get a very, very good link performance. So we measure the link gain to be positive. So we measure the link gain as shown here. So the link gain is all the way to 12 gigahertz is positive. The dynamic range is very high, 116, which is very comparable to what was shown with just a plain fiber. And we get noise figures of under 20 dB. In terms of filter functionality, we get filters which are tunable from 150 megahertz to 300 megahertz. The center frequency is tunable, so it is tunable from about 1 gigahertz to 11 gigahertz. And we can also get multi-band filters. Okay, so we see a lot of nice functionality. So we've shown advanced filtering and high performance are achieved simultaneously for the first time. So we tried to emulate a real life scenario. So we took a strong interference signal, only 300 megahertz away from a weak signal. Okay, so this is minus 56 dBm. This is minus 26 dBm, which is an interfering signal, which we want to get rid of. So we put a notch filter on this interference signal, right? What happens is this gets completely knocked off, right? So we completely knock the interferer. Whereas an interesting thing is we actually amplify our signal. Normally, as I said, we see loss in most RF photonics. Here we actually see gain. Okay, so this is the great thing about this. We actually amplify the signal, right? So we see that we have amplification of the signal, which is quite an interesting thing, right? So if you think about it, if I were to use, let's say, I'm trying to go back. It's not allowing me to go back. So for example, if I were to go back real quick, and I were to use a filter which looks like this. Okay. Imagine I had a microphotonic filter which had a 30 dB of insertion loss. What would happen? My signal was at minus 56 dBm, right? I put my notch filter, my interferer goes away. Great. But what happens to my signal? That gets attenuated by 30 dB. Okay. It goes into the noise floor. I can't detect it anymore. What's the point? If I can't detect my signal, then there's no point of the filter. I have removed my interferer, but I've also removed my signal. But here we're actually amplifying my signal. So that's what makes it very, very interesting. While getting 47 dB rejection for my interference. So if we compare the performance, link-only performance, which we take as a benchmark, is link gain of 0, noise figure is 10 dB or lower, SFDR is 120. From this Jose Capani's group, link gain was minus 20, noise figure 30, SFDR 80. From David's paper, minus 30 dB link gain, noise figure of estimated of 30 dB or more, SFDR not measured. This paper from 2010, link gain 0, noise figure 40, SFDR 105. From our previous paper, we optimized the link gain, but not the noise figure. But in this case, we've shown link gain of 8 dB. We've shown noise figures of 15, which is coming very close to this. And more recently, we increased this to sub 10 dB by using some RF techniques. But in that case, the dynamic range was effective, an SFDR of 116. So there's always a trade-off, right? So if I'm trying to optimize all three, that's not always possible. It depends on the application. If in an application you need an extremely highly linear link, then you would try and linearize the link. And if in case noise figure is important and dynamic range is not that important, then you can put an RF amplifier, a low noise amplifier at the input, and reduce the noise figure. So there are various optimization tricks that you can play in order to service your application. Okay, so initially I talked about requirements for microwave photonics. So I said it needs to be compact. Check. We've done it on a chip. It needs to be functional. Check. We've shown resolution. We've shown multi-band operation. We've shown high tuning. We've shown high reconfiguration. Check. And finally, I said we need high performance, right? So we showed we've got the world record, link gain, SFDR, and noise figure. That is also checked. So that's why we're very excited about this, because we see a clear path taking this technology from the lab into the real world. So to conclude, I introduced microwave photonics to you, which is an extremely and exciting research area. So a lot of the students in our group, I think about 50% or even more students in the group are working on microwave photonics on different applications, from you saw radio or fiber to performance optimization, to waveform generation, to filtering, phase shifting, delay lines, beam forming. So a lot of students are working on a lot of different areas. And there is, of course, a lot of potential for improvement. SPS for RF. So you can have high resolution filters, which can improve performance. And how do you improve performance? I showed that you can improve performance by playing around with the setup, by combining optical engineering with RF engineering. And we came up with highly functional devices with high performance. So what we feel the future holds is fully integrated microphotonic devices, which allow cost and power reduction. Okay. So I'd like to acknowledge the students in the group. So the PhD students, Reena and Rajveer, a bachelor student who's graduated, Suraj, and MTech student, Shubham, assistant professor in the department who I collaborate quite closely with, Abhishek, and a postdoc, Gaurav, my previous PhD student, Yang, and David, and Ben Eggleton as well from U20 in New Sydney, and of course the funding bodies, SERB and the ARC. Okay, so I hope with this talk, I've given you a bit of flavor about what is microwave photonics and how we can use microwave photonics. Hopefully you get excited about this field and get motivated. So I'm very happy to take questions. And also if you feel free to email me if you want to work in this area, or let's say on-chip lasers, coherent communication, nonlinear photonics, please feel free to get in touch with me. My email is here. We've got a lot of vacancies in the group. So please feel free to reach out. Thanks again. Thanks again to the IIT Bombay Optica and IEEE Photonics Society chapters for giving me the opportunity to present our work and to hopefully get you excited about microphotonics. So I'm very happy to take questions. Thank you so much.
Uh, Thank you, Professor Amol Chaudhary, for excellent talk on the microwave photonics. So that you briefly and deeply conclude the how the microwave photonics taking place on the telecommunications. So now we are moving to the QA sessions. We have a couple of questions in QA box. So first question is how to minimize insertion loss in coupling light to the chip. What could be alternative approach?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. So like there are various ways where you can try to optimize the coupling. So there is a lot of work that in fact Professor Shankar Selvaraja has pioneered in terms of grating coupler designs to minimize losses. So it's essentially the grating design, which is one thing. So if you're looking at silicon photonics, that is one way to minimize insertion loss. The other is if you're trying to do insertion loss minimization, you can look at tapered inputs, right? So you can, let's say you can have a single mode fiber and you can have a tapered input so that you collect most of your field and try and couple into your waveguide. So these are two technologies where we're trying to couple light from an external laser to the on chip. Now, but of course, what we really want to move towards is where we have everything on the chip, right? So where you're not going from off chip to on chip again to off chip, which works in the lab context. But if you're looking at utilizing the system in the real life context, you want to make sure that everything is some sort of hybrid integration. So there are people who are looking at flip chip bonding the laser, so you're able to couple. The problem with silicon is you can't have active sources, so you have to look at 3 5s in order to couple from in order to generate the laser. So if you're able to do all of these on chips with relatively small mode areas and you're able to match the laser output to your waveguide, then your losses can be minimized. So what you want to do is move away from going coupling in and coupling out and doing experiments, because that's a way to do it in a lab. But if you want to commercialize it, you have to come up with technologies where everything is in a very compact form factor and you've optimized the mode sizes such that you're getting very low losses. So that, of course, that's a very important point. So by optimizing the insertion loss, a lot of the losses can get minimized, because nowadays there's triplex technology from which is pioneered by Linux in Netherlands, where the propagation losses are pretty much non-existent, right? So they are dB per meter or something very low. But it's the coupling losses which is causes some of the chip loss, the loss for the entire chip. So there are a lot of these work which is going on at the moment, and a lot of the excellent work being done by Shankar and IC Bangalore.
Okay. In the continuation, another question is, which software do you use for modeling microwave photonics chip?
So there's no, I mean, there are various ways you can do it. So like typically, like if you want to model a analog photonic link, we just do it in MATLAB. And in that, you can also use various 2D solvers to put, for example, the mode profile of the waveguide. You can use it to solve for the modes, and you can estimate the insertion losses from the mode solvers as well. Or you can take experimentally known values, right? So the main thing that you would need for the chip is what is the insertion loss and what is the dispersion. So you can do any mode solver. There are tons of mode solvers out there. You can use any of them. I won't take names of the companies because I don't want to endorse any company, but there are many out there. Right? So you can use that to simulate the mode profile and the propagation. And the analog photonic link we simulate in MATLAB.
Okay, hope this answered. Moving to the next question is how the Brillouin scattering is differ from other scattering like Raman scattering.
That's an interesting question, right? So if you think about it, we are the main three scatterings we know are Rayleigh scattering, Raman scattering, and Brillouin scattering. Brillouin scattering. So let's start with Rayleigh scattering. So Rayleigh scattering happens at the same frequency. It's not an inelastic scattering; it's elastic scattering. So we will always get Rayleigh scattering. That's what causes the floor of your optical fiber loss. So if you look at the propagation losses, the floor is determined by a Rayleigh scattering, right? So that's you can't do much about it. That's what gives you the 0.2 dB number. Brillouin scattering is again, Raman scattering is again an interaction between acoustic, the optical waves and optical phonons. Okay, so Raman scattering is sort of a more microscopic nature in the sense that it's the light which interacts with the molecular vibrations, right? So that's why the Raman shift is few terahertz. Okay, so it's a much higher frequency, much more smaller scale interaction. Brillouin scattering is the interaction of the acoustic phonons, which is a much larger structural property. So if you know Raman scattering, if people have looked at Raman scattering, people use that to look at the microscopic or the molecular properties of material. Brillouin scattering you used to see mechanical properties. So it occurs over a much larger scale, few microns scale. So it is interesting also, like next year is the 100th anniversary of the discovery of Brillouin scattering. So next year is a very exciting year. So it's just a historical perspective.
Okay. Moving to the next question. So how small all the microwave photonics elements are that can give high compact integration on chip with electronics chip, since the world is focusing more toward low scalable chip with high density.
Yeah. So so currently, of course, if you're looking at, if you just keep aside the Brillouin scattering, I'll come to that in a second, because they're the two topics that I touched on. So the first one is just pure integrated microphotonics, right? So in integrated microphotonics, when you talk about the overarching processor, can be a silicon photonics platform. It can be a hybrid silicon photonics platform, or it can be a silicon nitride platform. So silicon photonic platform, we know the dimensions are about 220 nanometer high by about 500 nanometers wide. Whereas silicon nitride is slightly larger waveguide. So these are the sort of scales of the optical waveguides you talk about, which will be the platform of choice for most microwave photonic technologies. Now, if you're trying to compare it to electronics, it can't compare, right? Because electronic, your transistor sizes are down to 7 nanometers or even lower. So that's not where photonics can compete, because you have to think about the Rayleigh limit of light, right? So we talk about 50 nanometers. So we have to be at least, a significant within a significant fraction of that wavelength. So in that sense, the device size will always be larger for when compared to electronic chips. But the idea is you're not trying to replace electronic chips or your processors. You're trying to enhance the electronic circuit. So if you think about it, your electronic chips, which will have your transistors, will exist. There is a lot of work on optical computing, but I feel the future in that sense will only be for interconnects, because the size is going to be too large, and optics will help in off-chip interconnects for in the petajoules per bit sort of number. Microwave photonics is purely competing with RF component. For example, I say an RF filter, right? A reconfigurable RF filter. If you just Google a reconfigurable RF filter, that's massive. because that includes a lot of LC components which are switchable, right? They're extremely they have a very high consumption. They have a very large form factor. They're extremely expensive. So if you're able to get a photonic device which fits in that form factor and is comparable, uh, it beats the RF counterpart, then that's a win. Talking about getting into your smartphone, that of course is possible if you're trying to, let's say, see a tunable filter in a very narrow band. Let's say the SAW filters that you have in your smartphone are 2.4 gigahertz. But if you want filters which are tunable, let's say in the upcoming band from 3.5 to 3.9 or 3.6 to 3.9 band, and it's tunable, then you can also get it in a compact enough form factor. But there are a lot of challenges that still exist. So there are people working on that. There are a lot of work which is ongoing. And at the end of the day, it's about integration of the laser, the modulator, the photodetector, and your photonic processor on the chip. So that is ongoing at the moment. And I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing results already. So there was a great result. So I didn't show an example, but for example, this paper was a very exciting result where they showed an on-chip microphotonic filter. It wasn't optimized, but it was shown already in an indium phosphide platform. So a lot of exciting work is ongoing. So I know it's a long answer, but to a very short question, but the question actually required a long answer to explain, the various different ways where microphotonics can actually help.
Okay, so I hope this answer. And moving to the next question is, in one conference, one speaker told 2031 will be the world of photonics that will suppress fastly growth electronics chip. So what is your view, and how this technology helping to know advanced research in this domain?
So, okay. So I'm just trying to read this. Will be the world of photonics that will suppress fastly growth electronics. Okay. So yeah, I think that is so what we are talking about is the Moore's law is sort of saturating. So the idea is you will be using photonic interchip interconnects in order to enhance the electronics. So once the Moore's law flattens out, of course, photonics has a bright future in order to overcome the Moore's law, where you can look at photonic interconnects where you're trying to route signals from the chips in order to reduce the power consumption, which is something that is going to be problematic. In terms of having an on-chip optical processor, I sort of covered it in the last answer. I feel that's a big ask because of the form factor of photonics. It can be possible if there is some rapid innovation, but as I said, the devices are limited to 500 nanometer width, right? Within 500 nanometer width, and if you have, let's say, a switch or even an on-chip transistor, that takes a lot of processor in the optical domain. So I feel there's a limited advantage that photonics can help in computing, but definitely in signal transport, photonics will be able to help. And I'm a full proponent of photonics belonging to this century, right? I mean, of course, photonics has come a long way, and there's, if you see globally, with the sort of even within India, the sort of facilities that have been set up at IIT Madras, which have been set up at IISc Bangalore, even at IIT Bombay, the Silicon Fab, and some fab also at IIT Delhi, and some other institutions like Kanpur, Kharagpur, where all of these facilities are coming in. So I think the recognition is already there that photonics is going to tremendously help, and there is a lot of work already going on in the country, right? And even AIM Photonics, which pumped in $1 billion to do photonic manufacturing. So there is a lot of exciting work that is happening in this area.
Okay. And one last question I have is, can we use visible range of EM spectrum for wireless communications?
Yeah, so this is an area known as visible light communication. So like this is a work which is also being done by my colleague Abhishek Dikshit. So he's looking at like instead of having an RF router, you can use LEDs, right? So if you have nowadays most of the lighting in the house is LEDs. What if you use these same LEDs for communication, right? So of course you can it's not a laser, so of course you can't go to 100 gigabits per second, but you can definitely go to few hundred megabits per second, and Abhishek's already looking at this. So yes, this is definitely possible in the context of visible light communications, the Li-Fi project which he has, and people are also looking at visible free space optical communications, where you're looking at communicating over a few kilometers using optical beams to get large bandwidths. So this is definitely again another area of research.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. So now move to the end of the session. So let's thank the speaker, Professor Amol Chaudhary, for excellent talk on microwave photonics. And thank you, sir, for accepting our invitations and giving the talk today and making the event very successful. In future, we'll come with again one interesting talk from you. So
Sure.
once again, thank you for.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to thank you again, Mr. Kishore, for the kind invitation. It's always my pleasure to speak with students. One thing I also pointed out was that as you mentioned in my bio, that as an OSA ambassador, I'm quite passionate also about professional development. So I've gone to various institutions to talk about your careers, presentation skills, and how to get the most out of professional society. So I'll be very happy to have a more informal chat with you in the future, just to have a very informal chat about like what photonics can be, what are the various future what are the various job options that exist, how you can give presentation skills. So please feel free to get in touch with me anytime. So my email is there. I'm very excited to speak to students. So please go ahead. And thanks again. Have a good evening and a good rest of the week.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.